I have to say, as a coaster enthusiast, it's not often I hear of people planning a trip to Knott's Berry Farm. Usually, you'll find people stopping by here while visiting Disneyland and Six Flags. This leads to a lot of people missing out on the charm that this park has embedded inside its borders. This 57-acre, 104-year-old amusement park is situated in the middle of Buena Park, California, and sits nestled between residential and commercial space. To the outside observer, this park doesn't seem to stand out much at all. Once you step inside, you'll realize it has so much on offer. Why not consider following along with this video to find out the best ways to experience this park and have a great day here? If you like these kinds of videos, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay in the loop for our future uploads. If you've followed along with my other theme park ultimate guides, then you'll be familiar with the format of these videos. I like to break them down into 3 different segments. These would be what you should do before visiting the park, what to do once your plans are locked in, and finally, what to do once you're at the park. At the end of this video, it's my goal to have you as prepared as possible to have an unforgettable visit to this long-standing, hidden gem of Orange County, California. Making these videos for you guys takes a lot of work, so I really appreciate all of the support you're giving me. Every like, view, comment, and subscription really helps me out a lot. But if you feel like helping me out further, check out my Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can help me in my journey to bring even more of this high quality content to you guys. During this video, I'm going to have this audio cue when I have a secret tip. These ones are super important and can help you give an edge above the crowd. I will also be discussing the best times to ride the major coasters like Ghost Rider and what rows you should ride them in. I'll also be discussing whether or not the Fast Pass is worth it when visiting the park, so stay tuned. Like most amusement parks, there are some steps you should take to prepare before visiting. This would include things like what you should wear and where you should be staying. This section is where we'll be discussing park entry options like tickets, as well as whether or not it's worth it to get the dining pass. Tip number 1, pick the right hotel for you. Knott's is unique in that its on-site hotel has prices that are generally not all that expensive. This note, plus the fact that it's on site and that you don't have to pay for parking, makes it bar none the best option, especially if you plan on spending multiple days here like we did. Even then, as a hotel, it is fairly decent with prices anyways. There are a few other places nearby, but the prices and quality of this hotel are good enough that it isn't even worth mentioning those, in my opinion. Tip number 2, know what to wear. I've mentioned it in other videos and I'll mention it here. The Thuzies are right about some things. Cargo shorts. These come in a wide variety of designs, but the key here is that you get ones with zipper pockets. If your pockets utilize buttons, things could easily slip out. Next, you need to have comfortable shoes. If this video was sponsored by them, I'd be raving on and on about the Hokas I'm wearing, since they have been a game changer for me. Next, a good t-shirt. This is Southern California, so unless you're visiting during the winter, just go with a t-shirt all day long. Depending on the temperatures, there's a good chance you'll be sweating a decent bit, so you want a light colored t-shirt made with good materials to keep you cool. In this case, athletic shirts can actually be a really good option. If you're going in the winter, temperatures can get pretty cool later in the day, so it might also be a good idea to bring along a light jacket with you. Once again, I really want to emphasize the importance of wearing proper shoes. While this park isn't all that large, you're going to be on your feet all day long. Tip number 3, know what to bring. As with any theme park trip that I go on, I have always found it to be a good idea to bring a small backpack. This ensures that you can bring all the necessities like pain meds, hand sanitizer, small snacks, a hydro flask, and more. This is a topic I might do later, as picking the right backpack is a quest I have been on for quite a while. You generally don't want to bring one that's too large and pack it full with everything you could possibly need. Knott's Berry Farm generally has longer operating hours, so you don't want to completely weigh yourself down. One final thing that I would recommend bringing is a portable charger. You're going to be most likely spending your entire day at the park and presumably taking a lot of photos, consulting the park app for information, or generally getting distracted by whatever it is you do on your phone. The last thing you want is to have your phone dying on you while you're still at the park. Tip number 4, plan to spend one full day here. Knott's Berry Farm can be 95% conquered in a single day. There's not a massive amount of coasters here, and depending on when you go, there aren't terribly huge crowds either. Despite this, I still think it's worth spending the entire day here so you can get the most out of the park. There is still a lot you can enjoy here, from visiting Ghost Town to seeing shows, riding rides, and more. You don't want to make your visit here a half-baked one. Tip number 5, pick the best time to visit. Since Knott's is open year-round, this gives it one of the more unique operating schedules of most regional amusement parks. That being said, going during the spring or summer for the weather, or in the fall or winter for the events, there's a ton of good times to visit. If you plan on going to Knott's Scary Farm, the park will be packed the entire time, for good reason. If you plan on going during Knott's Merry Farm, then there is a good chance that the crowds will be much lighter. Same thing goes for the park during the spring. Like most amusement parks, summer is going to be the busiest time for this park, so you should ideally plan on going during the week to minimize crowd presence as much as possible. Tip number 6, use these resources to help with planning. When picking out the best day to go, there are several websites like isitpacked.com and qtimes.com, which are a great resource for helping to anticipate what crowd levels could be. Something I should note here, these websites are not 100% accurate and only give an estimation of what they think crowds will be like on a day-to-day basis. They get most of their data from historical figures, so keep this in mind when visiting them. Secret tip number 1. Use Knott's Berry Farm's FastPass prices to anticipate crowd levels. If you want an extra secret resource to check potential crowd levels, then look at the online prices of FastPasses. These can change based on the anticipated crowd levels that the leadership at Knott's have determined will be likely. If the passes are more expensive, then expect it to have larger crowds on those days. Tip number 7. Try visiting during the special events. Katie and I were lucky enough to visit during the Knott's Merry Farm event. This was one of the best Christmas-themed events we've been to at an amusement park. Throughout the operating season, Knott's puts on a lot of different special events, and you won't want to miss these. They include live performances, fireworks shows, parades, and more. You can easily find information about when these are going on through the Knott's Berry Farm official website or through the app. Tip number 8. Pre-purchase park entry or season passes online. Speaking of the website, this is where you want to go to purchase your entry tickets or season passes. When buying individual tickets, it is significantly cheaper and quicker to buy them online. It prevents you from having to wait in line at the ticket counter, which is not a quick process at all. Tip number 9. Consider getting the all-park passport if you plan on visiting any other Cedar Fair property. Unfortunately, Cedar Fair decided to stop including entry to all their parks in their Platinum Passes, so now you have to purchase the all-park passport if you want to visit other parks in the chain for the year. Despite this, if you are planning on spending any time at the admittedly far away California's Great America or at any other park in the Cedar Fair chain, I highly recommend getting this all-park passport so you can save yourself a lot of money. Tip number 10. Find out if the dining pass is a good option. Even if you're only spending a single day at the park, the dining plan is an insanely good option and shouldn't be skipped out on. A meal for a single person can cost as much as $30, so by having a meal plan, you'll be spending roughly half of what you would otherwise. Doing the all-season dining plan similarly can save you even more money and pays for itself in less than 4 meals. Tip number 11, download the Knott app. I will probably state this tip in just about every video of this style. If the park has an app, you want to download it. These are great for getting not only live wait times and ride closures, but also for finding information on shows and having a digital park map. It's available on both Android and iOS, meaning unless you have a flip phone, you can download the app. These apps have a pretty decent filtering option so you can find exactly what you need, be it restrooms, rides, restaurants, and more. Tip number 12, find out if the fast passes are worth it. If you watched my video about fast passes, you may remember me freaking out about the prices of the fast passes at Cedar Fair parks. Let's face it, Knott's Berry Farm's fast lane prices can be pretty steep. I would really only recommend paying for them if you either have limited time at the park or just have a ton of cash to burn. Yes, the lines can get very long here, but if you focus more on planning your trip out better, you're more likely to spend less time waiting in line without having to pay the extra cost. Secret tip number 2, take advantage of your season pass benefits. As a gold or prestige season pass holder, you are granted bring a friend discounts. If someone in your group doesn't have a season pass, you can easily save them money at the gate with these discounts. I would highly recommend keeping this pricing in the budget to make sure whether or not this option is cheaper or more expensive for your group when visiting. Now that you've picked out when you're going and all that, we should dial in a bit more and figure out what to do while you're at the park proper. The most important part of this park is what you do at the start of your day. You really need to plan on making the right moves so that you beat the crowds early. Tip number 13, know where your entry options are. Did you know that Knott's has 2 separate entrances? There's obviously the main gates at the front of the park. Beyond this, there's the western entrance at the back of the park that lets you in next to Pony Express. In my opinion, this entry option should not be considered, as it puts you farther away from some of the best rides in the park. Tip number 14, plan on arriving at least 30 minutes early to the parking gate. If you are not staying on the property, then you've got to enter the parking lot from the main gate like everyone else. In my opinion, it is a good idea to get here at least 30 minutes early so you can get a better parking spot. Some people don't really care about this. Here's why I think it's important. You're going to be doing a lot of walking and standing around throughout the entire day, and after all of that, would you really want to have to walk even further just to get to your car? I sure wouldn't. Not only does getting to the parking gate early give you a chance of finding a better spot, it gets you through park entry quicker too. Secret tip number 3. If staying on site, plan on getting to the main gate 30 minutes prior to park opening. On a similar note to the previous tip, you also want to try to skip the line at the main gate if you're staying on the property. It's pretty much guaranteed that most of these people will be following a similar path, so be sure to get here early so that you aren't bogged down in a small crowd. You might also want to consider stopping by Starbucks on the way to the entry gate since it's right there. Tip number 15, park in this lot. Due to the limited space, there are several parking lots around the park. In my opinion, there is only one correct lot to park in. Based on distance, if you can get in early, the best place to park would be on the lot to the east of Knott's. This guarantees you'll end up walking the shortest distance to and from the park. Tip number 16, save at least $150 to bring with you into the park. I've mentioned previously that a meal for a single person can cost roughly $30. Having at least $150 to your name is a good idea for a single day here, so you can pay for meals, lockers, and any additional things like snacks, on-ride photos, and souvenirs. You most likely could get by spending a lot less than this, but generally I feel like this is a fairly safe amount of money to have ready. Tip number 17, know where the best places to eat are. Knott started out as a chicken stand that gained a ton of popularity and morphed into a theme park from there. This park does have other great restaurants, so here are my top 5 to eat at. Number 5, Grizzly Creek Lodge. Number 4, Wilderness Dance Hall. Number 3, Ghost Town Grill. Number 2, Casa California Restaurante. And finally, number 1, Mrs. Knott's Chicken Dinner Restaurant. Since this last place was the reason for the park opening, there's no way you should skip out on it. Just save it as a meal for dinner, as it tends to be on the heavier side. Tip number 18, know which flat rides are the best. In total, Knott's boasts over 70 rides, many of which offer incredibly unique experiences. When it comes to the flat rides, these 5 are the must-try experiences and should be included in your plans. Number 5, Calico Railroad. Number 4, Calico Mine Ride. Number 3, Sky Cabin. Number 2, Soul Spin. And number 1, Supreme Scream. The drop tower here has a reputation amongst park goers, and it's for a good reason. This is one of the better S&S drop towers I've personally experienced. Tip number 19, know which coasters are the best. Nearly all of the roller coasters here are great, but a good rule of thumb is that the bigger it is, the better it is, in most cases. So here's the top 5. Number 5, Sierra Sidewinder. Number 4, Hang Time. Number 3, Silver Bullet. Number 2, Accelerator. And finally, number 1, Ghost Rider. The last 2 I mentioned are hotly contested, and you may have your own opinions about them. It can't be argued that Ghost Rider and Accelerator are the top 2 at this park, however, despite which order you put them in. Tip number 20, make a checklist of all the things you plan on bringing with you to the park. I mentioned earlier how you should bring a small backpack filled with all the essentials you might need. I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but I can tend to be very forgetful, so having a written checklist I can consult before leaving my hotel has been a lifesaver. Make sure to write down all the things you plan on bringing with you to the park, and double check it before you leave. When I say everything, I mean everything, including the clothes on your back. You really wouldn't want to forget those. Tip number 21. Either list or visually plot out your route using the park map available online or through the app. Later in the video, I'm going to give you a rundown of what I believe is the ideal itinerary for how to conquer this park. Even then, I wouldn't expect you or myself to remember every detail about this plan, so make sure to visually write down what your plans are exactly so you can consult back to these. In my opinion, when you're in the meat grinder, it's always good to keep a list of goals and a plan handy so that way you can stay on track. You can easily draw on the map itself by taking a screenshot of the park map with your phone and using the included markup tools available inside the default photo gallery apps. This will allow you to visually chart out your path, or you can always use a list instead. Tip number 22. Eat a small but filling breakfast snack before visiting the park. Since you're planning on being jostled about all day long, I highly recommend eating at least a small snack for breakfast before going to the park. You want to start the day off right. Even if you plan on having a proper breakfast, I would still recommend to keep it fairly light so as to ensure you don't feel sluggish and bogged down for most of your day at the park. Since we've got most of the planning out of the way, now is the time to put that planning to the test. Keep watching as we're about to dive into the perfect itinerary for how to absolutely master this park. If you're like me and like content creation, stay tuned as I have some great recommendations for the best photo opportunities later in this section. Tip number 23, mark your spot. This is just a good tip in general. If you're parking in the main lot in front of the park, either screenshot your location on your phone's map where you park, or take a picture of one of the nearby signs to denote where you are. There's nothing like spending an entire day at an amusement park, walking around and spending even more time trying to figure out where your car is. Tip number 24, follow this itinerary. Once you're in the park, you want to head straight towards Ghost Rider. The line for this ride can stay long throughout the day, so it's a good idea to get through the first rush as quickly as possible so you don't spend too much time in line. From here, start making your way back through Ghost Town towards Calico Park. At this point, you'll hit a fork in the road. Head west through Charleston Circle, then north all the way through the boardwalk. You want to hit Accelerator. it is best to skip everything on the way and head straight to this ride. After hitting both of the most major coasters, you have a choice. You can either hit Silver Bullet or Hang Time. Both of these rides will most likely have a similar line throughout the day. I would personally recommend hitting Hang Time first, since its line can be a bit longer and since it's a bit closer. From here, hit Silver Bullet. The rest of the rides will be easy to conquer and won't pose too much of an issue with long lines. I might recommend hitting up Sierra Sidewinder soon after this, as it too can have longer lines, but this is totally up to you. At this point, the rest of the day is yours to enjoy. Tip number 25. Check out Ghost Town Alive. During select times of the year, Knott's Berry Farm puts on an event called Ghost Town Alive. During this event, there are many live actors that roam through Ghost Town. You'll meet bandits and possibly even the mayor. There are different performances that go on throughout this area of the park during this event, so make sure not to miss them. Tip number 26. Check out the theater shows. While most special events are happening, the Walter Knott Theater, located at the back of the park, has some incredible shows that are put on. We got a chance to see a Christmas show, and it was an awesome production that was so much fun. Tip number 27. Stay hydrated. As you can tell, there is a ton of walking you'll be doing while you're at the park. It should also be noted that Knott's doesn't have a huge amount of shade, so I highly recommend following the daily recommended water intake. For men, that means drinking roughly 104 ounces of water in a day, and for women, that means 72 ounces. The most common size of hydro flask I've seen carries roughly 32 ounces of water, so you want to drink this and refill it roughly 3 times over. It seems like a lot, but this is a really good amount to keep yourself hydrated throughout the day. Tip number 28. Know which seats are the best for each ride. There's not a huge selection of rides here, and some of them you don't even get much of a choice for where to ride, but this list is still important to go through anyways. So let's dive in. Ghost Rider, front or back row. If you like the insane head choppers, go for the front. If you like more airtime, the back row is king. Silver Bullet. This one is a toss-up, but I would recommend sitting on the left side in the front row. Hang Time. This ride can tend to have a fairly uncomfortable rattle in every row except the front. Pony Express. This ride doesn't do much, so any row is fine. Sierra Sidewinder. A lot of the rows are good on this one since they all spin, but I found the best luck in the backwards facing back row. This row would often face towards the ground at the lowest part of the ride. Jaguar. This ride doesn't experience all that much in the way of forces, so any row is fine. And finally, Accelerator, front or back row. If you want the sense of speed, the front row is the best. And if you want to get flung out of your seat over the top hat, then the back row will be your favorite. Tip number 29. Know the best ways to cool off. Knott's Berry Farm has 2 major water rides. One is a log flume and the other is a river rapids. I personally would recommend Timber Mountain Log Ride over Calico Rapids, as most of it is inside an air-conditioned building. Also, the theme song is stupidly catchy. Tip number 30. Is Soak City worth it? If you're weird like me, then you may not be the biggest fan of water parks. For the rest of you out there, from what I can tell, Soak City Shores is a decent water park with a lot of attractions on offer. This could be a great way to cool down and take things a little easier for a while. This water park isn't the best one out there, but it has the capacity to handle larger crowds. Tip number 31. Ride the train. Knott's has a train ride that circles around the boardwalk area and cuts through Calico Park. This train ride has live actors that put on performances during it, so this is especially a good experience for families. Tip number 32. Ride the Stagecoach. If you like getting unique views of the park, consider riding the Stagecoach. This horse-drawn carriage goes on an elevated path around the entirety of Fiesta Village, Camp Snoopy, and the Silver Bullet ride area. This ride provides a nice, relaxing way to get great views of the rest of this part of the park, especially if you're sitting on top of the carriage. Tip number 33. Eat your meals later or earlier than the rushes. From about noon to 1:30 p.m., most of the restaurants in the park experience a rush where everyone is trying to eat lunch. I would highly recommend for you to either get your food no later than 11:30 a.m. or after 1:30 p.m. so you don't have to wait in a long line. Tip number 34. If you have kids with you, check out Camp Snoopy. Knott's Berry Farm is very much a family-oriented park, but it still does have a lot of larger scale thrills. These rides may not be catered to smaller children, so it's important to know what experiences they can do. This is where Camp Snoopy and the nearby Fiesta Village come into play. If you're visiting with small children, you also cannot miss the Calico Mine Ride and Jaguar. Tip number 35, ride Calico Mine Ride. I may sound like I'm repeating myself, but this is super important. Calico Mine Ride is a classic ride that, while very much on the slower side, is the park's most heavily themed attraction. It was one of the earliest rides the park introduced and is a significant part of its history. On a hot day, this ride is great since it is mostly indoors and features strong air conditioning. Tip number 36, check out the best gift shops in the park. For its size, Knott's has quite a few gift shops. Here are my top 5 shops at the park. Number 5, Accelerator Shop. Number 4, Cordy's Corner. Number 3, Boardwalk Surf Shop. Number 2, General Store. And finally, number 1, Virginia's Gift Shop. This last one often has the largest variety of souvenirs and tends to have some more classic items that tend to be harder to find at the rest of the park. Tip number 37, know the best places for dessert. If you're looking for a sweet treat while you're here, check out these top 3 dessert choices. Number 3, nearly anything from the Ghost Town Bakery. Number 2, funnel cake at the Cable Car Kitchen. And number 1, any of the boysenberry flavored items from the Farm Bakery at the front of the park. The most popular stop is at the Cable Car Kitchen, but if you are at one of the dessert spots and there's anything boysenberry flavored, go for that. Tip number 38, know which are the best night rides. There's really only 3 options for what would be the best night rides at the park. Number 3, Accelerator. Number 2, Silver Bullet. Number 1, Ghost Rider. With Accelerator, you go so fast that there just isn't a bad ride on this coaster at all. With Silver Bullet, this ride dodges and weaves above a decent area of the park, and so doing this at night gives a heightened sense of peril. Finally, there's Ghost Rider. With how deep this coaster dives into its own support structure, riding it at night makes it feel all the more chaotic and out of control. There's also the awesome effect added with the orange LEDs that light up the entire course as well. Tip number 39, check out Knott's Scary Farm. I know I mentioned this in the tip about special events, but this needs to be stated again. Knott's Scary Farm is the original Halloween event and is one of the best out there. It's good enough that I would recommend traveling out to this park just to visit it during this event. There are so many different themed mazes that you'll find something new and amazing throughout all of them. Tip number 40, check out these spots for taking great photos. For our last tip, let's talk about photo opportunities. A lot of these aren't super hidden, so let's get started. First, I like the area next to Ghost Rider that starts on Grand Avenue. This is a fairly large area and covers most potential photo spots of Ghost Rider from outside the park. Next, we have this area near Silver Bullet. This area offers a near panoramic view of this entire coaster and thus gives you a ton of different spots to get great photos of this ride. Up next is on the balcony of the Grizzly Creek Lodge. This spot gives you some height over Sierra Sidewinder and looks especially great during golden hour. Next, we have the Stagecoach. I mentioned it earlier, but this ride can get a unique perspective of Silver Bullet, Jaguar, and Sierra Sidewinder. Finally, I'm going to recommend this sidewalk next to the park. There are places on nearly all sides of Accelerator that you can go to get unique photos of it. It can be a bit of a walk, but if you like getting unique photos, this is the place to be. So there you have it. Hopefully, after watching this video, you should feel prepared to have the best day at Knott's Berry Farm. This park is one that is seeing some new development, so if you're going this year, make sure to return again soon, as the up-and-coming attractions are sure to be great. If you're like us, this can become one of those parks that pulls you back in with its unforgettable charm. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporter, Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!